Nobody likes being around anybody who's in a bad mood, right? There are some exceptions. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins will be back on the ice practicing this morning up in Cranberry. The Devils are in tomorrow night. And if I sound a little bit extra lively this morning, it's because I've got a little bit of extra oomph from being around these guys. That began in Salt Lake City. It began with Sid's overtime goal and the players getting together in the room afterward and looking at the 4 games that followed and saying, this is it. We can still control our own situation. If we get a good or even a really, really good or great result out of these next 4 games before the NHL's 2-week break for the Four Nations face-off. So what do? Come home. They have, the whole hockey stereotype about your first game back after a long road trip and how sluggish it is. Nope. I know it was the Predators, who've been legitimately the NHL's most disappointing team, but they took care of it. Didn't get goals commensurate to the amount of shots and the amount of quality that went into them. That's because Jussi Saros was really good. But they eventually got the 2 they needed, and then Brian Rust's empty netter, and came out with their first shutout of the season. Alex Nedeljkovic with 25 saves there, and it was front to finish. It was a really, really, really solid showing. And when you ask them, and they didn't start saying this after they won a couple. They were telling me this in Salt Lake City. They believe they deserved better in terms of results from that 7-game trip as a whole than to go 3-4. They felt like they deserved a W in Anaheim for how they played. They felt like they deserved a W in Seattle for how they played. And if they'd gotten those 2, of course, it's a 5-2 trip, and the whole dialogue and discussion is very different. As it is, they resolved themselves to continuing to play that way and continuing to push. And yeah, that persisted even through the trade over the weekend that sent Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor to the Canucks for Danton Heinen, Vincent Desharnais, an 18-year-old prospect, and my God, a first-round pick. How did that happen? How do you make a fairly even 2-for-2 exchange, get the additional prospect, and by all accounts, he's a legit prospect, Melvin Fernstrom, and then, we want a first-rounder, too. Okay, here's your first-rounder. Let's get it done. They're not alone, though. I mean, the Stars did something, I think, even more ridiculous in giving up a first-rounder to the Sharks for Michael Granlund, Cody Ceci, and, I don't know, probably some other former Penguins who were Sharks or whatever, but that's the market. Kyle Dubas sees it. Hats off to him. That's just an outstanding trade, really for the present, but especially for the longer-term future of this franchise. But for these guys, for the current players, for the current team, they had some emotions, obviously. Both of those players that went out were really, really popular with their teammates as players and as people. But their goal didn't change at all. Listen to this brief dialogue the other night between me and Chris Letang.
After the trade and everything, great defensive effort like this.
No, I think, we know in the trip we didn't get the result, but we actually played really well to come back at home and try to climb in the standing before the break. It was important.
Do you feel like, this team is determined? I know some guys in Salt Lake City told me, these 4 games are huge for you guys.
Yeah, no, like I said, we're trying to make a push before the break and put ourselves in a better position. So, we have a ton of good players on this team. It's not like we're pecking it in because we're getting some guys traded.
I love it. I love when he's mad. Actually, I like when a lot of these guys are mad. I'll take mad Sid, by the way. Sidney Crosby freaking out on Saros, or vice versa. I'm not even sure what the heck all happened there. Sid had a bit of a poke there, an extra poke at Saros' glove. Saros gets up and and shoves him back. Sid gives him a jab into the mask, and they both ended up getting coincidental minors. But it's indicative, I thought, of the extra edge that this team is carrying itself with in games and even between games. When you hear Letang say something like what he did there with me, like, what do you think we're supposed to do here? Pack it in because somebody got traded? That's, from a hockey standpoint, the best version of Letang. That's the Letang you want. That's Game 6 in San Jose Letang. And I'd argue across the scope of athletics that you're going to get closer to peak performance when you're functioning like that, when you're functioning with that extra fire about you, whatever it is that brings it. Well, this team's got it right now. And that doesn't mean this team is going to get through all 4 of these games with the maximum of 8 points. Everybody knows that they struggle with the Devils regardless of where they play them. And after that are back-to-back nights in New York and in Philadelphia against the Rangers and the Flyers, both of whom are stuck in that same 9-team pack for the Eastern Conference wildcard spots. It isn't going to be easy, but they, regardless of what you think, regardless of what I think, they are treating this like it's do or die. They're treating this as if they don't get these results now, and then there's a 2-week break. And from there, it's only a matter of about a week and a half until the NHL's trade deadline that Dubas could just keep going, that he could, ship out even Ricard Raquel. And I'm all right with that. I'm all right with all of this. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Jim, who wants none of this. Jim says, DK, I hate to be a downer, but I'm not buying it. Even if the Penguins do go on a run and get into a position to challenge for a playoff spot, why do we have a second year in a row where this team sleepwalks through the majority of the season before deciding to give a crap? I'm 53, and they've been my absolute favorite team in my favorite sport since the mid-'80s. The last 2 years have really taken the bloom off the rose for me. Why should I invest so much into a mercurial team that only cares when they want to or have to? Jim, I got no counter for you. And I got to tell you something. I don't think they would either. I'm not in the business of speaking for these guys. But something that Kevin Hayes told me, this was the other night in Salt Lake City, really rung true. And that was, there's nothing that we can do about that. We realize what we did. We don't necessarily understand all of it or why it happened, but we know that it did happen. And we know that we have to face the consequences of that now. So all we're focused on is what's in front of us. That's probably the best that anybody can give you on this. And remember, he wasn't even here for last year. Other guys spoke of it from more direct experience. Marcus Pettersson, and this was obviously before he left, he would just continuously express bewilderment over what happened. Not just the lack of, the apparent lack at times of giving a crap, because there were definitely games where they didn't give a crap, but more so the lack of cohesiveness as it relates to defending, because they all knew what they needed to do. They just couldn't get everybody on board for whatever reason up until not so long ago. But again, I'm not trying to talk you into anything. I'm not trying to say that there was anything that reflected well on the players' own leadership in the locker room, or for that matter, the coaching staff, right up to Mike Sullivan. It was a bad look times about 25. And for all you or I know, they could make a return engagement tomorrow night. They could just go out there and lay the biggest egg you've ever seen against the Devils. But I don't think so. I don't think so. And I feel from my own position, and I can't stress this enough, I'm never telling other people what to feel. Just because I feel that way doesn't mean I'm implying that you should. That goes whether I'm doing this program or writing a column or whatever. But I feel like, given what I do for a living, that it's fair if I sense, I could be wrong, that it's authentic. If I sense, whether it's through their play or through their words or other behavior, that this time they mean it, they're not necessarily going to win every game, but they're going to put everything that they have into it, then it's very much part of my role as something of a conduit for you to share that, to express that. And I'm going to say it again. It's been fun being around this group for a while now. I like it, and there's a very good chance that I'll like it a lot more by week's end. I appreciate the question. I appreciate the sentiment, Jim. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins, and we'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.